When is the last time you worried about money? When is the last time you thought about money? If you're like most people, it was probably sometime today. If you're like me, maybe sometime in the last few minutes. Whether you like to admit it or not, money plays an integral part in all areas of your life. And yet, so many people don't have the faintest clue when it comes to managing or making more money. And if that's been you, you might wonder why some people seem to be able to attract wealth while others, maybe you, can't seem to get their money straight no matter how hard they work. But what if the difference isn't just pure dumb luck? And it's not even intelligence, but rather the way you think about money. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change, making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. My guest today is here to talk about wealth, but not just from a financial sense. Wealth in all areas of life. When Bronson's team first reached out to me about him coming on the podcast, I immediately went to his podcast and listened to a bunch of episodes to see what he was all about. And it was obvious to me right from the get-go that we would click. The way Bronson talks about the rich brain and how shifting your mindset around money can not only change your bank account, but your entire life, I knew was something that I wanted to share with you. So if you've ever felt like you got the short end of the stick financially, maybe you were born into a family that just didn't get it, or you've been stuck in a cycle of just scraping by, then this conversation is going to show you why wealth isn't just about your luck or where you were born, but it's about learning a set of mindsets and habits that you can build even if you weren't born with them. My guest today, Bronson Hill, is an investor, author, and the host of the Mailbox Money Show. He's raised over $50 million in capital and helped countless people move from financial stress to financial freedom. His work focuses on teaching practical, learnable wealth building habits that don't just grow your money, but grow you in the process. In this episode, Bronson shares why 86% of millionaires are self-made and why you have to become wealthy mentally before you'll ever see the money in your bank account. He explains his concept of wealth worthiness and why we all earn in line with how much we believe we deserve. You'll hear about some of the common misconceptions that keep us stuck with our money mindset and how he learned to take big risks for big reward. This conversation will change not only the way you think about money, but the way you think about life and yourself. So please enjoy this conversation with Bronson Hill. What does it mean to have a rich brain?
Rich brain is basically wealthy people think differently than other people. And one thing I used to think is that people were wealthy and you were either born with money or you weren't come from the trust fund family or something. And I'm very middle class, and so that's kind of discouraging. But what I realized is there's some research around this that shows that actually 86% of millionaires are self-made. So that means that these are learnable, teachable habits. They're mindsets and habits, things that we do and things we think that actually can be changed. So most people that became millionaires, almost 9 out of 10, figured out how to do it. And so that's really what the rich brain is. It's not just simply having money, it's being a person that is a wealthy person, because you become a wealthy person first. And then, typically, and then you get the money, right? It's not that you can win the lottery and get the money. But the problem is most lottery winners haven't developed the character or the mindset around wealth to be able to maintain that kind of wealth. So I think that when we change our view around money to realize that, hey, these are learnable, teachable things, we have a whole new way of approaching money and how we learn about it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You made a distinction there between wealth and money, and you said that you have to become wealthy before you get the money. Could you expand on that or elaborate a bit?
Yeah, so most people's plan to become wealthy is to win the lottery or to have their rich uncle die. That's the plan, or the inherit. Like that's what most people would think. And so the idea is really people will just want to have the stuff. But there's this saying of, and I can't remember who came up with this. It wasn't me, but somebody came up with the idea of be, do, have. Instead of just simply having the stuff, everyone wants to have the stuff. But the problem, like I said, is if you don't have the character, you haven't become that person, you're just not going to be able to manage it well. So the correct way, and really the way really it's meant to be done, is you become the person. You become it through the mindsets, the habits, the things that you're looking, or you actually become that person in the way that you approach life and people, and maybe a stewardship mindset, whatever the mindset is, that really is able to manage wealth. And then you start doing the things, be and then do. So you do those things that a wealthy person does. And so you invest in yourself, you're investing in your time, you're doing maybe it's mindset practices, you're actually learning different skills, and you want to earn more, you got to learn more. So you become the person that's doing these things, and then you're able to have the stuff. And I wish it was the other way around. We got to just have the stuff that we want. But over time, the character that's really built and the mindset that's built to not only be able to have wealth, create wealth, but to be able to maintain it. And that's really the way that it's designed, is be, do, have. Almost every single person, and this happens with professional athletes too. You get people that have no financial education. There's a 30 for 30 documentary with ESPN called Broke. It's an older, maybe 10 years plus, but it showed that around 80 to 85% of NFL and NBA players were bankrupt, literally bankrupt within 5 years of being out of the league, right? It's because they have no training. They're literally, if somebody's never had a job, and just the stories and things that would happen, is just there's no sophistication around finance. And these aren't fancy things. It's just that you develop some of these things over time. But a lot of times it's through mindset and just habits that you create.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I just have to tell you about my free weekly newsletter. If you want to join the thousands of change seekers just like you who get a curated list each week of 5 educational, informative, and inspiring pieces of content to help you on your quest for change, then click the link in the notes that says free newsletter right now. You'll get signed up for free tips that will make your change journey easier, sent straight to your inbox every Friday. All you have to do is click free newsletter in whatever app you're listening on. Okay, now back to the show.
Yeah, I love the concept of be, do, have. And it's so funny. You've said mindset so many times already. And I was on your podcast a while back and we talked a lot about mindset. And it's one of those things that there's always overlap everywhere, right? We're talking about finance, mindset. And then you even talked about sports athletes and things like that. And be, do, have is something that I learned about in the fitness world when I was doing personal training. And it's the same thing. People will say, when I have the time, then I will start to make it a priority. But it's like you have to be the person who makes fitness a priority, and then you will do the thing, which is exercising, and then you will have the body that you want rather than the other way around. You don't just take those actions, you have to become the person and embody it. And we see that everywhere in life. And yet, I caveat that with the reality that if it were that easy, it would already be done. And we would just all just shift to that transformation and say, okay, now I'm rich and then I'll be rich. So how do you start someone on this path when this has not been their reality? You just said that some people aren't born with a silver spoon. Everyone doesn't have that leg up in life, but to your point, they don't need it. So if I've been that person where I'm like, yeah, like it just feels like I got the crappy end of the genetic lottery. I got parents who didn't have money and they also don't know anything about money. And like now I'm stuck in that same place. How do I start to become that person who is wealthy?
Yeah, it's really a great question. This is actually the whole process of Rich Brain. So my first book behind me is called Fire Yourself. It's basically how to replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. We've raised like $50 million in our business. And again, I'm come from a very middle class family. I had a sales job. I was doing well in sales, but I wasn't great. But I basically, after starting this company, I realized just the huge need for people to be educated around finance. And it was really highlighted to me. This was a couple of years ago. I was on an Uber ride in Dallas, Texas, and I was going from an event to another dinner or something like that. And somebody overheard me talking. The Uber driver was a woman in her 30s and early 30s. And after I got off the phone, I was talking to some investor about something financial. And she's like, how do I learn about money? How do I learn about finance? And I thought about, I don't really have a good book or a good place to lead you to, because it's something that it has to become part of your habits, your mindset, become part of who you are. You've got to just continue to say, hey, like Brian Tracy, if you want to earn more, you have to learn more. And so you have to be open that, hey, maybe there's another way to do this. And if you really can accept, if a listener can accept that, hey, 9 out of 10 people that became millionaires did it because they figured it out, right? They didn't inherit it. If that's actually true, then you actually have the ability to learn and grow. And I'll share one thing that I learned in my research, because I've had conversations now with thousands of high net worth investors. And one thing that's been very interesting to me is this idea of wealth worthiness. And wealth worthiness is something, it basically, we get equal to the value that we feel like we're worth. So I've seen this. It's almost like a thermometer, a thermostat. Somebody who makes $100,000 a year will find a way to make $100,000 a year. Somebody who's making $1 million a year will find a way to do that. And what is that? How does that work? The challenge is we get what we feel like we're worthy of. Now, we wouldn't necessarily say it, but we see this in our relationships too. So here's one example. If I'm a single guy, which I'm single, if I show up at a party and I see a beautiful woman and I want to go talk to her, but my self-talk is, oh, you're not good looking. She's never going to like you. You've got nothing to offer. How's that conversation going to go? Right? It's probably not going to happen. Or if it does, it's going to be a terrible conversation because I basically have this negative self-talk. And most of us, about 90% of us, have self-sabotaging behaviors. So when we do this in business, we do this in finance as well, where we'll basically talk ourselves down. We won't see ourselves as being that type of person. I'll share a brief example of this. I had a business deal that I was looking at doing, but it was just bigger than what we normally do. It was about 4 or 5x the size of our business, and I passed on it. And then my partner said, hey, let's keep looking at this, whatever. And then because I've been doing this work and really, again, changing how I see myself, changing that person, creating that new person, I was like, oh, this actually is what I'm looking for. And I was able to receive that and step into that. Right. And so this will happen. This will show up in relationships. It will show up in finance. It'll show up in career. And it's all about worthiness.
Yeah, worthiness is such a good word and an interesting topic that I really haven't talked about much on this show. But as you said, it shows up everywhere. Money is a very obvious example. It's the quote unquote broke mentality that so many people have or are born with or have been programmed into us. And on the opposite side of that is the rich person's mentality, because for better or for worse, when you have someone who was born into money, who maybe never earned that money or deserved that money, they just assume that's how it's supposed to be. And those are the type of people who take risks that a quote unquote broke person would never take, because they'd be like, I can't risk that. I can't do that. And to someone who doesn't have those limitations self-imposed on them, they will just take the risk because they haven't learned. So a big part of this then, and something that I've wanted to ask about since you answered the first question at the beginning of this conversation, comes down to nature versus nurture. And you've said so much already. Your rich brain, you can learn these habits. It's the mindset. There are practices that we can do, but there are pieces of this that definitely come from our upbringing, our background, the people around us, the communities that we live in, and a million other things. So how do you see that balance, or how do we start to take control of things that maybe weren't in our control in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love the nature versus nurture. And this is something that people would say, oh, that you're going to be really smart to make a lot of money. And that's just really not true. There's not a link between IQ and wealth. And if there was, I don't know if you ever met somebody and the person is really wealthy and you're like, man, I'm smart. I'm as smart as that. But the person's not that smart, right? They're kind of like, I can totally do that. But it's really true that a lot of times we think there's this huge link. And there's actually this saying that there's a reason why A students end up working for C students, right? People that had A's in school and college and high school, whatever, they end up working for people that are C students. Why is that? It's a lot of times because the C student was willing to take some calculated risks. They were willing to actually, and maybe a lot of really successful business people are dyslexic. What is it? What's that about? They realized they had to figure out a way to make it work, not simply by their own abilities. And the person who's a student, a lot of times they don't have the ability a lot of times to handle the uncertainty, right? When you're an entrepreneur or if you're in wealth, you have to be willing to take some risks. And I've realized there's a saying that fortune favors the bold. So if I'm willing to actually take calculated risk, and I love, this is a risk I really love taking, that if I'm learning a new skill, right? Let's say this was 6-7 years ago, I'd done a little bit of real estate, but I was like, I want to learn about commercial real estate. I want to learn about doing bigger deals. I want to learn about raising money. So I started going to meetups, and I realized these are local real estate meetups in Los Angeles where I live. And they're $20 to show up, and you spend a couple hours, there's a speaker there, or you talk to, maybe you're there for 3 hours, you talk to people, you network, whatever. And I thought, this is basically like a low risk experiment, because if it works, I could potentially change my life. And it totally ended up changing my life personally. But if it doesn't work out, I will have maybe wasted a little bit of time and a little bit of money. So it's not, if it doesn't work, I die, or you lose 90% of your money. Like it doesn't happen. You go completely broke. So those kind of low risk things, there's tons of these out there where you just, by learning a little bit, putting yourself in the room. And I think that's where the learning and the shows like this, and I'm sure people you work with, just that learning side is so important. And then it's also the people that you get around. If you're doing fitness, if you're around, a bunch of people that are sitting around watching TV and not working out all the time, like that's going to have a big impact on you, versus you got a friend who's pushing you to eat well and to work out, whatever, that's going to have a huge impact on you as well. So I think who we're around, there's that saying, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So there's a lot there, but I think that a lot of times we give way too much control over things that are not really in our control. And I've seen people that are not very smart IQ, or even just don't seem that smart, but they just continue to do things. They take the actions that people that are way smarter are not willing to take, and they become very wealthy.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point. It's funny when you said, "Oh, I'm sure you've met someone who's really rich or really wealthy," and you're just like, "Damn, like this person isn't that smart." And you've also, I'm sure anyone listening has had the opposite experience where like the smartest person is not the wealthiest person. Like you probably know
Yeah.
someone who's a literal genius, and you're like, "Oh, they're so smart," and they're just toiling away at some middle manager job or something like
Yeah.
that, or maybe they're a teacher, like something they love, but they're not the person who's million, billion, gazillionaire or whatever. So yeah, I love pointing out that there is no direct correlation. But I really like what you said about finding something that's like a low barrier to entry. That's what this whole show is about. Change made easy. How do we
Yeah.
make this stuff, I say in the intro, so easy that you can't not do it? And to your example, when you're thinking about multifamily investing or commercial investing in real estate, and you're just like one person who's maybe done a few deals or something like that, that can seem super overwhelming. But going to a meetup for $20, where the most you could lose is $20 and a few hours of your life, it's okay. But okay, that seems a little bit more reasonable. When I moved to Austin, Texas, I'm back in New York now, but when I lived in Austin, Texas, I didn't have any friends out there, and I made friends by going to like group workouts. Gyms would have a $20 group workout or something like that, and it's challenging to put yourself out there. It's challenging to go out and do new things and try new things, and you're paying for something, and there's all these little voices in your head. Oh, no one's going to like you. This won't be fun. But it's, if you could get past that and just do the thing, that it's very different to me than going to a speed dating, right? That might
Yeah.
be that's okay. That's like high, or a little bit higher friction, because it's like there's expectations there and things like that. So it's like, how can you find a thing that's in the world of what you're trying to do, right? If you're in the world, conventions are great, meetups are great, things like that, where it's like you can meet people, you can put yourself in that area, you can start to be around the people who have that mindset that you just spoke about, Bronson, where again, you're putting yourself around those people, and you make it easier so that you don't have as much resistance to it. Because to your point, we're always looking for certainty. That's one of the things I talk about a lot, where it's that that's one of the deepest human needs. Like we want to know, if I do this, what will I get? 100% for sure. Because again, if the deal is I give you 100, I get back 200 for sure, then I'll do that deal 100 out of 100 times. But if the deal is I'll give you 100 and I might get back 0, but maybe I'll get back 1,000, that's a much riskier deal. And that's the deal we're making in every area of our life. I go to work out, I don't get a immediate return on that. I have to trust that I have a return coming somewhere down the road. And relationships are like this, business is like this, fitness is like this, whatever area that you want to think about for the listeners. So my question for you, Bronson, is how do you get yourself to sit with that uncertainty, to be okay with it as the deals that you're making are getting bigger and bigger, both literally and figuratively?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it's a saying that we will have the success in life that we're willing to tolerate a certain amount of stress or uncertainty, right? So I'm probably butchering it, but there's a quote that basically is like, Michael Jordan actually shared this. He said, I've taken 9,000 shots and missed. I've had the game winning shot 25 times and missed. And I'll keep on shooting. And that's why I'm successful. It's like the idea of we're just continuing to be willing to take shots. And I think our ability to handle that uncertainty is really a lot of times a measure of how successful we're going to be and really how comfortable we are. And I think how comfortable we are with ourselves. Because the idea is I've been in situations where they're very uncomfortable. I just recently, this was a couple months ago, I went to an improv class, right? I haven't done this improv acting. You go up and you pretend to I'm not an actor. Like I did something in high school. I was in a play or something, but I'm not really, but like, I want to be somebody who's continually putting myself in uncomfortable situations because I don't know like what strategy is going to work. But Tony Robbins is, I don't know if you're a Tony Robbins fan, but he says success in life is 80% getting the right psychology. But he'll say, make your end goal and then continually change your approach. So you'll go and say, well, okay, I tried A, this didn't work. Okay, if you're trying to become wealthy, for example, I tried this thing didn't work. I tried this over here. I went to meetup, so I was okay, but I did this. I started this business. This really has potential. This could actually get me there. And so then you double down on that. So I think again, and that's really, it's a different mindset. If you are, and I think it has to be at some point, you've got to look at yourself in a way, whether you are a business person or an entrepreneur, you have to look at yourself like an entrepreneur. Because if you're going to become wealthy, you've got to be in charge of the business of your wealth. And the mindset when it comes to being an employee is very different than an entrepreneur, right? So an employee, if you make too many mistakes in your job, when I was in sales, if I made too many mistakes, lost too many sales, made too many dumb things, whatever, what would happen, right? I would lose my job, right? Because it's about not making mistakes. As an entrepreneur, I've got to be willing to make a lot of mistakes and quickly learn and can find out what works and keep going down that path. But again, it's especially as you get older, kids are really good at this. They're trying new things, trying new sports, whatever. But like, it's hard as you get to be an adult to realize you did something and it fell on your face. But it's really changing what failure looks like. That, okay, I did this. This does not define me. Okay, it didn't work. So I have information here. It's not indicative of who I am. And yeah, I'm going to go through things and things are not going to work, but it doesn't mean I'm a failure, right? Just because this thing failed. And so what is it that actually is going to work is continuing to try new things, doubling down on the things that work and being willing to put myself in situations where the outcome is uncertain.
Yeah, so powerful. That's such a good, important distinction. Being able to sit with that uncertainty, to lean into failure. We spoke about this when I was on your show, or I speak about on here a lot, the easier framework, right?
Yeah.
EASIER, and I stands for imperfection. It's being able or willing to take imperfect action. I talk about this about it being like a scientist. When a scientist has a hypothesis, they don't get upset when it doesn't go right. They don't say, oh man, the world is burning, or oh, I messed up so bad, or I'm so dumb, or all the other silly self-talk things that we get when we do try something and it doesn't work out. They say, that didn't work. Okay, what do I try next? And they continue to iterate. And that's the mindset that we need in any area of our life that we want to see improvement. So I love that distinction between the employee who actually gets punished for failure and the entrepreneur, the owner, or whoever else who actually needs failure to succeed or to grow. I'm curious if you have any other like employee versus entrepreneur kind of paradigms that you find helpful.
Yeah, I'm a big reader. I read a lot of books, and there's a book actually when I was getting ready to leave my job. So my corporate job was making over 200K a year in my job, and then I had replaced my income by doing investing in real estate and other things. And I have a cousin who's in real estate, and he said, "Hey, you should read this book." And the name of the book is Before You Quit Your Job. It's the same guy who wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, so it's the number one personal finance book of all time. It's a great book. And basically, this book, it talks about the employee mindset. Some of that stuff comes from the employee mindset versus the entrepreneur mindset. But he describes this analogy of being a entrepreneur. It's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute and trying to assemble one before you hit the ground. And in some ways, anybody who's been an entrepreneur has had moments like that where you feel like you're falling and you're wake up at 3 a.m. and you're staring at the ceiling. And you're like, I'm not sure how this is going to work out or how I'm going to make payroll or whatever. And the people I know, you talk to Elon Musk, he said several times he felt like he thought he was going to lose Tesla. Right. So people that are very wealthy and very successful often have this great, again, ability to deal with uncertainty. So that's a book I really like. Before You Quit Your Job. Again, it just talks around the mindset around it. What does it take? What does it look like? And again, if you want to change, for me, when I was getting ready to leave my job, I'd already replaced my income. I was in the right place to do it. But I talked to all of my friends and family, and they're all like teachers and government workers. Like they're all just, oh no, why would you leave your great job? I was making over 200K in this job. Why would you, this is the golden handcuffs. Why would you ever leave it? And then I got in a room full of entrepreneurs that were more successful than me. And they took an hour and listened to what I was sharing. And they said, without exception, they all said, you should leave your job pretty much as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work out, you could always go back to medical sales. And a lot of times we have these kind of like trade-offs in our mind. If it doesn't work, I'm a failure. What does this mean? Whatever. And it's like, oh, if it doesn't work, I can always go back. And who you surround yourself with and who you listen to is so important. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to, and I could literally go to every, like for a listener, almost every single area of your life. I could say, what's your spirituality look like? What's your net worth? What's your health habits? What's your fitness? Like all of these things. If I just get the 5 people you spend the most time with, you're probably an average of those people. So if you want to change that, you've got to get in the room with people that are 10x or 100x wealthier than you, that are in way better shape than you are, that are a bit more spiritual, whatever your goals are. And that's, I think, the biggest cheat code is just getting in the room with people that are there that have a different mindset that will approach the challenges and problems that you have in a totally different way.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you started saying this just now, my immediate thought, like my immediate subconscious thought is like easier said than done. It must be nice to be able to get in a room with a bunch of rich people or something like that. But then as you're talking, I'm thinking it's like, oh, actually probably isn't that hard. As you said, you can pay $20 to go to an investor meetup, or you can go to your local economics bureau or something like that. Or same thing with fitness, right? You can go to a gym where everyone is super jacked. Most people who are out of shape actually avoid that type of thing. So
Right.
while I know, and I am speaking for listeners potentially too, because I can get that feeling of being like the immediate defense mechanism is, yeah, I just
Yeah.
don't have those people around me. Oh yeah, it's not my fault. These are the friends I have or the family I have. But it goes back to being okay with being uncomfortable and putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, because I don't think it's the fact that we can't get around different groups of people. We can't be around entrepreneurs or more wealthy people or more fit people or people who read more books or anything like that. I think it's that scares us, because then you
Yeah.
become the small fish in the big pond, and it's something that we don't like. It's the crabs in the bucket. We like to be with our own. If I'm broke and all my friends are broke, then it's, man, the government, man, the economy.
Yeah.
But if I'm broke and everyone around me is rich, maybe there's something
Yeah.
about me. It's just interesting as you're going through that. I felt myself going through that. I wanted to get defensive and I wanted to just be like, yeah, like I just can't do all this stuff. And if I'm being honest with myself, it's like I probably could be more willing to put myself out there, more willing to go put myself in places, because they're not going to come to me.
Yeah.
A bunch of rich investors are not going to come hang out with me in my little podcast studio in my basement. So if I'm going to get to that place, I have to be willing to do it myself. So I appreciate you offering that up, offering that reframe. And while you're talking about that, you're talking about having the job, that having the trappings of success from the outside, especially the people who have those normal 9 to 5 jobs. Everyone's like, you must be crazy. You must be like, why would you leave that or something? And it's easy to look at it now in hindsight and go, of course, like now I have more money and I was able to invest more or something like that. But what were some of the actual struggles that you went through when you left your job that didn't play out maybe the way that you wanted them to, or actually did make you potentially even second guess what you were doing?
Let me start with what you were first sharing about being uncomfortable. And because, yeah, it's like I'm an extroverted person, but I still go to networking events and I feel uncomfortable. I feel out of place. I feel like I'm like, and I think this is something commonly most people have some sort of imposter syndrome, right? What am I doing around all these guys that are jacked? I'm not jacked. What am I like? I'm in the wrong room here. We feel that way. But I think that it's just when you realize that everybody feels that and that's totally normal, that you can normalize it for you. So I try to I do cold plunging at home, right? Like you're a fitness guy. We do hard things because we get known to be someone who's doing hard things. So the cold plunging is great, but it's putting yourself in that thing can be challenge, can be so much growth happens. That's where time under tension with your muscles. That's how your muscles get stronger. So for me, real quick, how I just want to share the story where I went on this cruise. It was an investor cruise. Robert Kiyosaki, the guy Rich Dad Poor Dad, was there. He wasn't sponsoring, but he was there. It was a couple hundred people, and the cruise was $7,000. It was a $7,000 1 week cruise. I was making good money, but still, that was a sizable amount of my take home money to be able to go on this cruise. And I was like, this is a risk. I don't know. This might be the dumbest thing ever. On that cruise, I basically was able to have a conversation with a guy and basically talk to him about his business and kind of, hey, how does it work in this area? Can we work together? And from that one conversation, I went from I'd raised $100,000 for one investor deal that we formed a partnership basically on this cruise that we, over the next 18 months, we raised $15 million together. Right. And it came from basically putting myself in the room, paying the money, and then saying, I paid the money. How am I going to make this worth it? How am I going to find a way to make this worth it? So again, a lot of times I will pay to be in rooms with amazing people because of the doors that it will open. And so a lot of people say, well, that's a risk. I don't know. It seems like a lot of money. What if you didn't, what if nothing happened? I would have learned that really didn't work for me. Maybe that would be something else. So I think with the transition for me, that was how it started for me. And that kind of really got things going. But I think the biggest thing when I was getting ready to leave the job, it was just like, how do I know when it's time to leave? There's nobody can tell you. Some people will literally say, oh, I've got this idea. And they just quit their job and they take out a loan and they go do a real estate mentorship. And they're like, dude, you're in debt and whatever, but they find a way to make it work. And other people, they wait till they're like a month short of retirement. And they're like, okay, I'm financially free. So it's this balance of what you can really tolerate, what you feel comfortable with. And then I think it's good to have different plans. I've had a couple moments where it's been like, oh man, like this has worked out. Like things have gone phenomenally well at certain times and in certain areas. And other points I've been like, wow, I have a lot of net worth now, but I have no cash flow. Am I going to have to go back to get a job? I've really had those moments. So it hasn't been all super easy, but I think it's, again, just really continuing to get in rooms where I can grow, continue to be in places where I'm getting to the next level. And if I can keep doing that, I know I'm going to keep growing. And everything, again, is information. It's all learning. And so if I can just take the things I'm learning and apply them, it's going to change everything.
It's interesting. You said just now that you might have multiple different plans that you have to play on each different given moments. I'm curious. That just made me think of, how do you feel about the concept of burning the boats
Yeah.
versus having multiple A, B, C, all the way down to Z backup plans?
Yeah, I think it depends on your temperament. I think again, there are people that I know that just are really rash and they just make crazy decisions. And we know people like this, right? And we know them growing up, we know them now, but they'll just make crazy, they make it just a look at, oh, it's a dumb decision. But if you have things that are calculated risks, and when I say calculated risks, it's okay, there's like a 50-50 chance here. Like I could make $1 million over the next couple of years doing this, right? And the other 50% is not I go broke, but it's okay. I may lose some time, might lose, I don't know, 50K or 20K or what, like I'll lose some, but that might actually be like from a statistical standpoint, that's actually a pretty good odds of you doing really well. And if not, hopefully you'd learn something, right? So if you look, even if you lost 20K, you learn that about, hey, I'm going to learn something here. So I think that, I don't know, I think it really depends on the individual person, but it also, I think there's nobody that can really tell you that like when you should quit the job. For me, again, I like saying, okay, I've replaced, not only necessarily you have to replace your income, but if you can replace your living expenses. So if I was making 200K a year, I only needed about 70K a year to be able to live, right? So I was like, okay, that's much more manageable. Can I get 5 to 6K a month in investment income, which some is a lot of money. And to me at the time it was a lot, but it was like, okay, can I just build that up over time? And then I can have the choice of what I want to do here. So I think for a while I was hustling. Like I was working my full-time job. I was working 40 hours a week. Then I dialed it down to 25, 30 hours a week, but I was able to do all this other stuff on the side. So I was probably working 60 hours a week for a while. But then for me, like I knew it was temporary. I knew if I could really build that, it would really allow me to scale up even more. So I think that, again, having multiple plans is good. Having a backup plan is really good, and thinking it through and knowing, hey, if this doesn't work, what's this going to look like? You plan that it will work, but if it doesn't, how are you going to shift? What's going to happen? Or do you have a backup that's going to just make it so that you're okay? So that, hey, do I have a year's worth of money that I can live on, that just in case something doesn't work out, I'm able to live? I think those are good questions to ask yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I think it comes down to something that anyone listening knows that I speak about a lot on this show, is knowledge of self, knowing your own risk tolerance, knowing how you will feel. There is no one right answer to any of this stuff. And probably there's a middle ground that we need, because if you're the person who needs 18 backups before you start on plan A, you need to all the way down to plan Z. Chances are you're probably never going to start. And if you're the
Yeah.
person who is just always throwing caution to the wind, sometimes that's going to work out for you, but sometimes you're going to get burned, and that's okay too. So the real, I think, takeaway is that there is no one right answer, but having some sort of middle ground where you have some sort of, like you said, build yourself a runway. You have 6 months of savings is usually a good idea. There are some basic ideas that we know are helpful for most people, but all of this stuff, I think the interesting thing to me about always conversations like this, and why I love talking to people like you, Bronson, is that there's overlap. Everything that you've talked about, entrepreneurship or wealth or just growing in that area, can be applied to fitness. It can be applied to relationships. It can be applied to mindset. It can be applied to personal growth. All of the same rules apply in all different areas of life. And that's why I like this show, where I don't just talk about how are we getting wealthy, it's how are we changing, because the reality is everything that you've talked about so far are just rules of creating positive change in your life. And if you can apply those rules, like wealth might be the most powerful lever to apply them to, but for some people they might be wealthy already but need to apply these same rules, these same guidelines to their health or to their personal relationships. And we see the overlap all over. So is there any place that you've seen in your life where something you learned from your wealth management, from your business endeavors, has paid off in a different area?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that there's a lot of carryover. I think when you have success in one area of life or a breakthrough in one area, it leads to other areas. And that's why I'm such a big mindset guy is I'll have a breakthrough. For me, I went through a divorce 7, 8 years ago. It was unfortunate. I don't hope nobody ever goes through that, but it produced the most substantial amount of growth in my life. So I think that sometimes the challenge is looking at just having the view that things don't happen to us. And we've all had this where, oh man, the car broke down and this, I can't pay this, or this other thing came up, or a friend's being a jerk, where it's all happens in the same time. We just think, oh my gosh, life is just beating me up right now. Well, maybe this is just intense training for you. Maybe this is just something that's helping you to learn. And if you look at life happening for you and not happening to you, if you believe, and I'm a person of faith, I believe that there's a great plan for my life, and whether that's God or the universe basically creating something for you, if you believe that for yourself, you have to go through challenges to get there. We've got to go through training. We've got to go through, if you want to have a great body, you can't not have any resistance, right? Resistance actually makes you stronger. So if you reframe it and just be like, oh, this is just a workout. This is just making me stronger. Then when challenges, then you have to bring it on kind of attitude that's, hey, I can handle whatever comes my way. I can handle all of it because it's actually making me better. And it's funny how things will come out, like when I went through my divorce or when I got fired from a job when I was in my 20s, those situations, like something difficult comes around, is, oh, this is a hard thing I see ahead, but it's not my first rodeo. Like I've been through all these other things and I know I'll be okay. And so it just gives you this greater confidence to go through things. And I think just that allows you to show up in a way how you want to show up. You don't show up and you're at the meetup and you're like, okay, I was forced to be here at this real estate networking thing. And I'm just like, but then you're there and you're like, if I'm feeling this way, probably everybody's feeling this way as well. Like most people are, so like, I can just show up and you never know what'll happen. So I think that's really how we create that better version of ourselves, is we can look at life is happening for us, not to us. I think challenges are just resistance that's really training and making us stronger. And I think honestly, if people get those two things, that will absolutely transform the way you look at any sort of obstacle, and even that you'll move toward obstacles because you'll see that they're actually giving you training that you need.
Yeah, that last sentence right there is the most, I think, impactful. When you make these mindset shifts, you learn that the struggles in life, the challenges, are things not to be avoided, but to actually search for. That's, I think, the people who find the most success anywhere in life. Anyone can overcome obstacles. We all have. Every person listening to this has overcome obstacles in their life. That's a very human thing to do. We all do it. Even if you think that you can't, you have, right? You can look back at your life and think
Yeah.
about a crappy time and then you're past it now. But what you just said there, Bronson, was that when you shift your mindset around these things, you actually learn that you don't have to be afraid of these things. You don't have to avoid them. And you can actually look for them because you know that on the other side of an obstacle, you get stronger. On the other side of lifting a heavy weight, your muscles get better. On the other side of a challenging life experience, you get smarter, better, faster, stronger. So whatever it is, I love that. I love that last key takeaway. And the last two questions I'm going to ask were on the same two questions I asked to all my guests. The first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
I think this is pretty big philosophical and just big, hairy, audacious goal. But my big change I want to see in the world is there are actually 20 to 40 million people today in modern day human slavery. People don't think slavery still exists, and it ended hundreds of years ago or 150 years ago. It's actually alive and well. There's more human slaves than there's actually been in the history of the world, in every country of the world. And it's just staggering to think about that. So I want to see that end. I want to see modern day human slavery end. I want to see people actually become free. And it's a mix of labor slavery, sexual human slavery, other types of slavery, but human trafficking. But that's a big, hairy, audacious goal and thing I want to see end in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely probably the most worthwhile goal that anyone could have, because it truly is a tremendous thing and something worth talking about more, I think. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Last question is for anyone listening, Bronson, if they want to start to make a change, whatever change they're trying to implement in their life, whether it's around their wealth, around their health, around their fitness, their relationships, whatever, if you had one action step to make that change just a little bit easier, what would it be?
Yeah, I would just say write down what it is you want. I know a guy that would do this every single day, just write down what he would want. I actually read my goals every morning for the year. I'll make some big goals for the year. And I don't achieve them every year, but I make progress on almost all of them and I achieve about half of them. So I think just if you can get clear on what you want, what will happen is as you become clearer and clearer, it will show up in your life. And it will show up not only just, hey, it just happens, but it will become clear what you need to do to get there. And so when I decided, hey, I want to quit my job in less than 3 years, my great corporate job, is like, it had to happen in less than 3 years. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just found a way. And it's just amazing how when you become clear on what you want, it allows you to be able to move towards it and something will open up that will show you the path.
Yeah, amazing. Clarity is a powerful drug. So the more you have of it, the better you'll feel. I appreciate this so much, Bronson. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to have links for both of your books in the show notes. But if people want to get in contact with you or learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so I have a free gift for your audience. This has been great chatting with you. I really appreciate it. The gift really is my 3 favorite cash flow investments of 2025. So what we do, obviously we help people with investing. So if somebody's interested to know, hey, what should I be getting involved with? What are the types of investments? So I've got a free gift here. It's called the Mailbox Money Blueprint. So if people, it's like 10 pages. If people text the word cash flow, all one word, you just text the word cash flow to 33777. Text the word cash flow to 33777. That'll just give you that for free. And then it'll let you know about future things that we have and deals and things like that as well. We can get in touch that way. So
Yeah,
great to connect.
amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Bronson. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you're really passionate about making this change stick, then I just have to remind you about my free weekly newsletter. Don't miss out on joining the thousands of change seekers just like you who get a curated list each week of 5 educational, informative, and inspiring pieces of content that will help you on your quest for change. Go to the notes of whatever app you're listening on and click the link that says free newsletter now. And you'll be signed up to get free tips sent straight to your inbox every Friday that will help make your change journey easier. All you have to do is click free newsletter right now. Go to that link, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday for new episodes of Change Made Easy.